On February 25th, 2026, Makala Pendley and her 7 children were reported missing by a caseworker from the Department of Child Services. Makala was 2 to 3 months pregnant at that time with her 8th child. The family's sudden disappearance from Indianapolis, Indiana immediately sparked an international search that would end in a tragic discovery in the mountains of southern Mexico. What Mexican authorities discovered would ultimately lead to more questions than answers. Hello everybody, welcome back to Into the 92, or if this is your first time joining us, let me tell you a little bit about what we do here. My name is Shannon. I have 10 years of experience working behind the scenes in the Indiana justice system. My goal here is to pull case files that have either been collecting dust or just weighing heavily on my mind off of the shelf and deep dive into the specifics of those cases, giving a voice to the victims that I believe should get more attention than the mainstream media has offered them to prevent those cases from falling through the cracks. All that being said, this is Into the 92. Let's dive in. Before we begin today's episode, I do want to give a brief disclaimer. This episode is going to cover an ongoing criminal investigation. All individuals discussed in this episode, including the suspect, Joseph Jude Butler Jr., are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. The information presented is compiled from official law enforcement statements, international court dockets, and verified public news reports. Names, dates, and locations are based on current records provided by Mexican and United States authorities. This podcast does not claim definitive insight in ongoing judicial proceedings, and updates will be provided as the legal case in Chiapas, Mexico develops. Also, I just ask that everybody bear with me as I do my best to pronounce some of the Mexican states, villages, and cities names that are listed in this case. I lasted all of 2 weeks in Spanish class in middle school, and after researching this case, I'm strongly regretting that decision. 33-year-old Makala Pendley lived for her children. For those who knew her in Indianapolis, Indiana, she was a dedicated, fierce mother through and through. She was completely wrapped up in the lives of her 7 kids, who ranged in ages from just 1 to 12 years old. And on top of managing a bustling household of 7, Makala was expecting. She was 2 to 3 months pregnant with her 8th child. To people like me, with the attention span of something that has no attention span. That sounds crazy, hard, and almost impossible. But to Makala, this was all she ever wanted. She just was made to be a mother. But beneath the surface of this busy Midwestern life, Makala had spent years trying to build for herself. A quiet desperation was gradually building. In February of 2026, everything shattered for Makala's family. Without warning, Makala packed up her 7 children and vanished from Indianapolis. It wasn't a planned vacation. It was a sudden, frantic flight. The question that will likely never be answered is, why would a heavily pregnant mother abruptly uproot her entire family and run? According to those close to the situation, Makala was consumed by an overwhelming, paralyzing fear. She believed she was about to lose custody of her children. She was going through a spiteful, rage-driven custody battle with her long-term boyfriend and father of her children, Joseph Jude Butler Jr. Driven by the primal instinct to keep her family together, she made the desperate choice, and she fled the United States entirely, heading thousands of miles away south across the border of Mexico, believing it was the only way to remain the primary parent of her children. Back in Indiana, the reaction to Makala and her children's disappearance was immediate panic. Extended family members woke up to empty rooms, unanswered phone calls. Makala's mother and relatives knew the intense pressure she was under, and they knew she would never simply just cut contact. As days turned into weeks, the silence from Makala's phone, it became deafening. They frantically called the police, searched her social media, and pled for answers, terrorized by the reality that a pregnant mother and 7 young children had vanished into thin air. They feared the worst, but nothing could prepare them for the nightmare that Mexican authorities would uncover months later in the mountains of Chiapas. How does a pregnant mother and 7 children travel more than 2,000 miles across an international border without triggering immediate red flags? And more importantly, why would she choose to make that journey with the very person she was in a heated custody battle with? And the very person at the core of her biggest fear, losing her children, Joseph Jude Butler Jr. Now I want to get into the timeline of this case, and I do want to make it clear that this case is still evolving. It is literally brand new with the updates that I've been able to find as to just a couple days ago. So information may change than at the time of this recording, and I just want to make that perfectly clear. This is what the information we have now. Timeline begins on February 25th, 2026. An Indiana Department of Child Services caseworker officially reports Makala Pendley and her children missing to the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. I've also seen reports stating that the report was filed on February 23rd, but the most listed date in media coverage is the 25th, so I'll be going with that timeline due to the case still being under investigation and official records not being released as of the time of this recording. Also, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children quickly issued a missing persons alert. By the time investigators look at her empty home, Makala and her 7 kids and their father, Joseph, are long gone. To understand how they slipped away, you have to look at the geography. From Indianapolis, the family drives southwest, crossing America's vast highway system. They pass through Illinois, Missouri, Texas, and finally hit the Mexican border. Back home in Indiana, there's nothing but agonizing digital silence as the months pass. No social media posts, no frantic text messages, no bank transactions, and the family can't trace anything as far as Makala and her 7 children go. For 4 long months, the trail goes cold. But then a strange twist in the timeline emerges. In May of 2026, Indianapolis police later reveal they actually located the family alive in Mexico. In fact, Mexican authorities briefly take the 7 children into protective custody. Let that sink in. But because the full extent of the danger is not recognized internationally, the children are released back to Makala and Joseph. Records have not been released publicly as to why this event in Mexico took place. The family vanishes a second time, deeper into the southern tip of Mexico, into the state of Chiapas. Chiapas is a stunningly beautiful but incredibly remote mountainous region. It is culturally distinct, filled with indigenous villages like Sincantan. It is an isolated terrain where foreign travelers stand out, but also a place where it is incredibly easy to fall off the grid entirely. As May turns to June, the family back in Indiana is left to wonder where the kids are, unaware that the final tragic chapter of Makala's fight is already unfolding in the Mexican mountains. On June 8th, 2026, the 4-month search for Makala Pendley reaches a horrifying end. Locals walking across a secluded dirt road in Parque El Lambo on the outskirts of Sincantan, Chiapas, spot something in a roadside ditch. They call local authorities. When investigators arrive, they discover the unclothed body of a woman who has been brutally beaten. Just a warning, we're about to discuss some heavy topics such as homicide, feticide, femicide, and SA. If this is something you are not comfortable hearing, please fast forward through this part of the episode. The forensic investigation begins immediately after Makala's body was located. Mexican state prosecutors determined that she had been killed and her body dumped in the ditch roughly 8 to 12 hours before she was found. The autopsy revealed a devastating reality. According to Chiapas State Prosecutor George Luis Lavin Abacara, sorry if I said that wrong, the official autopsy determined that Makala died from a traumatic brain injury secondary to severe blunt force trauma to the head, and she was still carrying her unborn child at approximately 6 to 7 months pregnant at that time of her death. Makala's sister, Marika Lambert, and other relatives publicly stated that local Mexican authorities informed them she had also been viciously beaten, SA'd, sodomized, and stabbed before her body was stripped naked and dumped into the roadside ditch. When the body is identified as Makala, a terrifying question immediately echoes across 2 countries. Where are the 7 children? Luckily, they were not at the crime scene. Mexican authorities immediately zeroed in on Makala's longtime partner and father of all of her children, Joseph Butler. They quickly discovered that Joseph Butler has a violent criminal history in the United States spanning Alaska to Indiana. He had been arrested for domestic violence in Mexico last year in August of 2025. U.S. officials also revealed that he was actively wanted on an outstanding arrest warrant out of Alaska. His staggering American criminal record includes previous charges of rape, assault, intimidation, involving threats of bodily harm, drug distribution, and weapons offenses. On June 9th, within 24 hours of finding Makala, Mexican police tracked Butler to a nearby city, raided the home, and arrested him. Prosecutors are charging him with femicide and are pursuing a maximum sentence of 100 years. Luckily, all 7 children were also located inside the home. They were found hiding and scared, but thankfully they were all safe and healthy. The man Makala trusted to help protect her and her children from the American legal system, in reality, was the greatest danger they would ever face. With Joseph Jude Butler Jr. behind bars in Chiapas, the immediate physical threat to the family is gone. But for Makala Pendley's relatives back in Indianapolis, the nightmare is far from over. They are now trapped in a grueling maze of international bureaucracy, trying to bring a shattered family back home. There's a small glimmer of light in the darkness. On Wednesday, June 10th, the family was finally able to speak with the children over the phone, as reported by WTHR 13 News. All 7 kids, from the 12-year-old who understands entirely too much, down to the 1-year-old baby, are physically safe in the custody of Mexican Child Welfare Services. But getting them and Makala's body back to Indiana is a massive logistical hurdle. There is currently no solid timeline for their repatriation. Now, repatriation is the complex, expensive legal process of bringing Makala's remains and her 7 children back home to Indiana. Because the government does not pay for international transport, the family has launched a GoFundMe campaign to help cover the cost and pick up the pieces for these children. You can find the link for their GoFundMe in the show notes of this episode or by searching Makala Pendley on the official GoFundMe website. But for now, the family is just forced to wait, thousands of miles away, relying on the U.S. Embassy and Mexican officials to cut through the red tape. I do want to share what her sister Jennifer has written on the GoFundMe website because it really explains what this family is going through right now. And that reads, quote, "My sister Makala Marie Pendley was murdered yesterday. She was found stabbed, raped, sodomized, naked, with her head bashed in, and she was pregnant. 6 to 7 months pregnant. She's been missing from my mom since February. This is the worst time in my life. My mom's life, all of our lives have been affected and shattered. I'm in shock, and so is my mom. Makala was a mother before anything. She became a mom at 16 and had 7 kids. She is survived by all her kids except for the one that went with her to heaven. My mom, my brother, my sister, and I are devastated and don't really have any funds to help us right now, so anything is appreciated. Just prayers for the kids and all of us." Unquote. But as they wait, a new deeply disturbing element has emerged. Makala's cousin, Jamie Downey, revealed to local news that the family has been receiving mysterious, harassing phone calls from an unknown woman in Mexico, according to details shared on Instagram. The voice on the other end of the line keeps demanding the same horrifying thing. We gotta bury her. We gotta bury her in Mexico. The family's response has been a fierce, defiant refusal, as it should be. They won't leave her there. They need to see her, to hold a proper service, and to bring her home alongside her babies. Investigators are looking into these calls, suspecting they might be a cruel scam or a targeted attempt by a bad actor to interfere with the case, which is just insane. Makala Pendley's story is a devastating reminder of how quickly fear can be weaponized. In her desperate attempt to protect her children from a system she feared, she fled into the arms of the very monster who would take her life and the life of her unborn child. As her sister Tiffany Lambert told Fox 59, she was a good mom. She put her kids before she put anything. Now an entire community in Indianapolis is rallying to ensure that her final act of devotion wasn't in vain. They are fighting to bring those 7 children back to the safety of home, to the aunts, uncles, and grandparents who will have to help them heal from a trauma no child should ever have to endure. Joseph Jude Butler Jr. faces up to a century behind bars in a Mexican prison. But for the 7 children left behind, the life sentence of missing their mother has just begun. And as I've stated previously, this case is still ongoing. Nobody's been convicted. The court records haven't been released. As more information emerges, I will be doing another episode on this case just to give an update as to where everything stands once it's all completed. That wraps up today's episode, the breakdown of the ongoing investigation into the murder of Makala Pendley. The work doesn't stop here. If you want to help support Makala's 7 children and bring them safely back home to Indiana, please consider donating to the family's official fundraiser. You can search Makala Pendley on GoFundMe on their official website or simply click directly on the link into the show notes of today's episode. That being said, thank you all for tuning in this week. If you like the way I covered this case, please consider hitting the subscribe button, leave a review, and share this video to help keep these case files open. The more eyes on a case significantly increases the resolution of the case. If there is a case close to you that you feel like is not getting the attention it deserves, or you just want fresh eyes on the case, leave a comment below. I'm starting a running list of these cases to cover here on Into the 92. I post a new video every other Tuesday, and I also want to end this episode by just saying to the family of Makala Pendley that my thoughts and prayers are with you and the 7 children that are awaiting their arrival back home. And that being said, see you guys in 2 Tuesdays. Bye.